What should be your choice of running shoe when your terrain varies from this to this in just a few kilometres? That's a decision that I and many other runners here in Spain have to make almost every day that we go running.
Right, let's talk about yesterday afternoon. I went for a run. 1 hour, perfectly reasonable, perfectly planned, 60 minutes of exercise, some fresh air, maybe a bit of spiritual renewal, the usual hamster package. What actually happened was something closer to a triathlon that no one told me I'd entered. In the space of 1 hour, 60 minutes, 4 surfaces, 0 support crew, I ran on tarmac road, I hopped through an orchard, I picked my way through light gravel trail, and then I hit what I can only describe as heavy mountain terrain. The kind of surface that looks at your shoes and laughs. 4 completely different environments, 4 completely different demands, and 1 pair of shoes. Now, if you follow the marketing from any of the major running shoe brands, the solution is simple. You just need a road shoe, a gravel shoe, a trail shoe, and a mountain shoe. That's 4 pairs of shoes for a 1 hour loop around a Spanish valley at somewhere between 150 and 200 euros a pair. We're now in the territory of a small family holiday, or as Mrs. Hamster would describe it, a crime against financial common sense. I should introduce Mrs. Hamster at this point, because she is in many ways the silent co-host of this podcast. She doesn't know it. She would not be pleased to know that, but she is a constant and powerful presence in every single shoe-related decision I make. Not because she runs, but because she can read a bank statement. Mrs. Hamster's position on running shoes is clear and consistent. It's not shifted by a single millimetre in all the years I've been running. It's this: you have feet, feet need shoes, shoes exist in shops, go there, buy the cheapest, and use them until they literally fall apart. The end. The idea that a specific surface might require a specific shoe, that the difference between a road shoe and a trail shoe is not just marketing, but genuine, meaningful engineering, this concept has not, as yet, fully landed. And I say that with the memory of several conversations I would rather not revisit. So, we have 4 surfaces, 1 pair of shoes, a budget that might seem theoretically infinite but in reality practically 0, and a decision to make. Welcome to the Hamster Running podcast. This is going to hurt in more ways than one. So, how do you actually approach this problem? How do you pick a shoe when every sensible answer is, it depends on which bit you're worried about most? And the financial answer is, whichever ones you already own because we're not buying any more. I call it the least worst strategy. And before you write in to tell me that least worst isn't grammatically correct, I know. I don't care. It perfectly describes the situation, which is not about finding the right answer, but about finding the answer that causes the least damage across most scenarios, including domestic ones. Here's how it works in practice. You mentally walk the route, you think about each surface and ask yourself, which section, if I get wrong, actually hurts me? Not metaphorically, literally. Which section will end with me face down in a ditch? For me, yesterday, that section was the heavy trail. 20 odd minutes of loose rocks, dry dust over hard-packed earth, the kind of path that could be described in a guidebook as challenging, which in guidebook language means you will fall. That becomes my anchor. That gets the casting vote on shoes selection. But this is where it gets complicated, because the heavy trail is only about a quarter of the run, maybe 20 minutes out of 60, which means if I choose a shoe that saves me on the trail, I'm potentially suffering on the road for the other 40 minutes. Running in big, clunky trail shoes on tarmac is not uncomfortable in a slightly annoying way. It's uncomfortable in a why am I running in Wellington boots way. And this is the paradox at the heart of the whole thing. You're not just choosing a shoe, you're choosing which part of the run you're willing to sacrifice. Road comfort or mountain safety? Speed on the tarmac or grip on the rocks? Now, a person with unlimited resources, a person whose spouse had embraced the philosophy of the right tool for the right job, might solve this by simply owning the perfect shoe for every occasion. But that person is not me. That person has not had the bank statement conversation. That person is, frankly, living in a fantasy. For the rest of us, the ones who have to justify every purchase, who have learned to carry the receipt in their running vest in case of an audit, the least worst strategy is not just a running philosophy, it's a survival mechanism. I should also mention the Spanish factor because it matters. The terrain here in the Valencia region has a very specific character. In England, trail tends to mean mud. Here it's almost the opposite. The orchards and lower trails are what I've described as dust over hard pack. The top millimetre is dry, loose, almost powdery, and underneath it's essentially concrete. You don't need a shoe that digs in, you need a shoe that grips without digging in. A very different task, one that took me an embarrassingly long time to understand and several unglamorous moments in various orange groves to learn. The research process for understanding Spanish trail services also incidentally involved purchasing 2 pairs of shoes that turned out not to be the answer. Mrs. Hamster remains unaware of the full details of this research program, intentionally. Let me introduce you to 2 characters in this story, both of whom live in my hallway, both of whom cost more than I'm going to tell you right now. Character 1, the hybrid, the gravel shoe. Sleek, versatile, relatively light. The shoe equivalent of someone who's good at dinner parties and also doesn't embarrass you at a formal event. Moderate lug, comfortable ride, a solid all-rounder. I want to be transparent about how this shoe was acquired. It was not acquired during a dedicated shoe shopping trip because dedicated shoe shopping trips require a conversation that I do not always have the energy for. It was acquired during what I described at the time was just popping into the sports shop to look. I came home with a bag. There was a brief silence in the kitchen, the kind of silence that contains an entire argument in compressed form. We moved on, the shoe stayed. In Islo de Belfries, the small town at the start of my loop, frequently, the hybrid feels brilliant. Light on the tarmac, responsive, the kind of shoe that makes you think, yes, I'm actually a runner, and this purchase was entirely justified, and perhaps I should mention that to someone. And then I hit the loose rocks near the old motocross circuit near Albaida, and the hybrid becomes a liability. Here's the thing about those loose rocks. They're slippery loose, like ball bearings on a tile floor where there's no purchase to be had. On those rocks, in the hybrid, I'm ice skating. Elegant, graceful, entirely out of control ice skating. Very occasional, brief moments of traction, mostly just momentum and the quiet awareness that if I go down here, the ensuing conversation will be why I needed yet another pair of shoes. Will be even harder to have. Enter character 2, the trail beast, the mountain shoe. Wide lug, aggressive grip, rock plate underneath, built exactly for the trail that made the hybrid look foolish. On those rocks, near Adzineta, this shoe is magnificent. It bites, it holds, it gives you back your confidence. You feel like you could actually stop if you needed to. A revolutionary concept. I won't go into the full acquisition story for the Trail Beast. It involved a period of what I can only describe as strategic patience, waiting for the right moment, the right mood, and a month where several other household expenses had gone unexpectedly well. The Trail Beast arrived in a plain barren box, which I considered quite thoughtful of the courier. But then the Trail Beast gets back onto the road, and it becomes something else entirely. Heavy, stiff, loud, every step a protest. The shoe saying, clearly and firmly, I was not designed for this. And it's right, it wasn't. You're asking it to do something it fundamentally doesn't want to do. So, there you have it. The hybrid, wonderful on the road, treacherous on rocks. The Trail Beast, magnificent on rocks, terrible everywhere else. Both of them perfectly designed shoes, doing exactly what they were made for. Both of them, from Mrs. Hamster's perspective, indistinguishable from each other in every meaningful way, including the one that matters most to her, price. And so we arrive at the hallway. The hallway is, I think, one of the most psychologically loaded spaces in the life of an independent runner. The threshold, the point of no return. Because once you go through that front door with shoes on, that's your decision made. Whatever happens out there for the next hour, the slipping, the stumbling, the quiet shame of being overtaken by someone in flip-flops, you and your shoe choice are in it together. And I'm standing there, 3 pairs of shoes in front of me. 3 pairs of shoes, each of which represents, to me, a specific surface solution, a specific compromise, a specific chapter in the ongoing story of a runner trying to understand the terrain he lives in. 3 pairs of shoes which represent to Mrs. Hamster approximately €600 that could have gone towards something else with a clearer purpose. A kitchen appliance perhaps, tiles, something that doesn't get muddy. She's nearby. She's not saying anything. She doesn't need to. The silence in our hallway when I'm standing in front of the shoe rack has developed, over time, its own vocabulary. Today's silence translates roughly as, I'm not going to comment on the shoes, I'm simply going to stand here and let the shoes comment on themselves. And the shoes do comment on themselves. That's the thing. Every time I look at them, I hear the accumulated history of every justification I've made. This one's for the mountain trails. This one's better on the road sections. This one was on sale. That last one was not as persuasive as I'd hoped at the time. It's even less persuasive now in retrospect, standing in the hallway with 3 pairs of running shoes and a spouse who has a gift for quiet maths. But here's what I've come to understand after all. The hallway moment isn't really about shoes at all. It's about honesty. Genuine, uncomfortable honesty with yourself about what kind of run you're actually going out for. Because the shoe doesn't follow the route. The shoe follows the intention. If I pick up the road shoe, the light one, the faster one, I'm saying, today I want to move. The heavy trail section is an inconvenience I'll manage, and speed is where I want to live. If I pick up the trail beast, I'm saying, today is about the mountain. I'll accept that I'll be plodding through ILO like a man wearing protective footwear rated for a minor industrial incident, because what matters is that when I hit those rocks, I'm ready. But sometimes, and this is the part that took me longest to accept, the decision is about neither of those things. Last Saturday evening in Alfrazi, I ran a local event. Competitive, but low stakes. Friendly atmosphere, beautiful course, and I wore my brand new gravel shoes. Brand new, not broken in, not fully tested, fresh out of the box. A box which had, I should mention, arrived during a window of time when Mrs. Hamster was at her friend's for her monthly manicure appointment. €25 every single month, without fail, on nails? Actually, I want to be clear that I fully support this. I mention it only for context. The box had been broken down and placed into recycling with what I can only describe as considerable efficiency. by the time she returned, nails immaculate, bank account apparently untroubled by the concept of a reoccurring monthly beauty expense. I find the contrast instructive. I suspect she would not. Did I wear them because they were the best shoe for that course? No. Did I wear them because the terrain demanded it? No. I wore them because they were new and I wanted to see what they were like, and a low-stakes local event was exactly the right laboratory for that experiment. I stood in the race start area in Al-Farazi and made a consciously suboptimal technical decision. I knew it, the shoes knew it, and somewhere through some spousal sixth sense that I've never been able to fully explain, I suspect Mrs. Hamster knew it too. But here's the thing, it was my decision, made for my reasons, and that clarity of intention, that honesty about why you're picking up a particular shoe, is the real skill that nobody talks about when they talk about mixed terrain running. It's not the gear, it's the self-knowledge. The boring loop doesn't tell you which shoe to wear. You tell the loop which shoe you're bringing, and then you both live with it. There is no perfect shoe for a mixed terrain loop. I want to say that clearly and with some authority because I've spent a considerable amount of money attempting to prove otherwise, and I failed every single time. The shoes are all still in the hallway. The loop is still mixed. The terrain has not reorganized itself into a single consistent surface out of consideration of my budget or my domestic situation. There will always be a section where your shoe is wrong. There will always be 10 minutes of road when the trail beast turns your legs to concrete, or a scramble on loose rock where the hybrid or road shoe sends you briefly and ungracefully airborne. That's not a failure of equipment, that's mixed terrain running. And here's what I've come to genuinely believe. Learning to run in the wrong shoe on the wrong surface and making it work is actually a skill, a real one. It forces you to adapt, to slow down and think, to pay attention to the ground in a way you simply don't when everything is perfect underneath you. The hybrid on rocks made me careful. The trail beast on the road made me work hard. There's something in that. Not enough to justify the expense necessarily, but something. And the hallway, that moment of standing in front of the rack, hearing the silence, making the call, that's not a decision fatigue, that's a runner doing the only coaching session they've got, talking to themselves, asking the right questions, being honest about what today actually is. You're doing fine, even when you're ice skating on loose rocks in the wrong shoes, in a shoe that arrived in a plain brown box, wearing something your spouse has not fully processed in terms of cost. You're doing absolutely fine. And for the record, the right tool for the right job is a perfectly valid philosophy. I stand by it. I've always stood by it. I will continue to stand by it from my position here in the hallway, surrounded by evidence. So here's my question to you this week. When your loop changes surface every 10 minutes, when the road becomes gravel, becomes trail, becomes something you probably shouldn't be on at all, which shoes do you trust? The fast one or the grippy one? Road confidence or mountain safety? Or do you, like me last Saturday in Alfrazi, just wear the new ones because you want to see what happens and the box is already in the recycling box? Let me know in the comments. I'll be in my hallway, staring at the floor, mentally preparing my next acquisition justification. This has been the Hamster Running Podcast. Thank you so much for running with me this time.